the Marvel Legends Eternals Gilgamesh Build-A-Figure Wave. Let's take a look at the characters behind the characters these figures are based on. Next up, Sersi. Let's talk about it.
MDB on the track.
So what we have here from Marvel Legends is Sersi, as she appears in the upcoming film Eternals by Marvel. I'm not going to be doing an in-depth review of the figure. Instead, what I'm going to do is take a look into the background of the 616 version of Sersi. For the in-depth review, I'm going to point you to MCU Collector 24, who has a review of Sersi and of all of this wave, including Thena, Ajax, and Crow, the exclusives. I'll have a link to his videos in the description below. So right now we're going to dive into the 616 version of Sersi. But first, let's talk a little about who she belongs to. And it's, of course, the group Eternals. The Eternals are an ancient race created over 1 million years ago by beings called the Celestials. And their purpose is to protect mankind from deviance. The Eternals, the comic book version of the Eternals, were created by Jack Kirby in 1996. The first issue, issue number 1, came out in April of that same year. As far as Sersi is concerned, Sersi was she actually appeared in comics well before issue 1 of the Eternals. She's been in comics as far back as 1950. She was first seen in a book, Venus. Venus had a comic back in the 1950s, and Sersi, then known as Sersi from mythology, Circe, appeared in issue 9 of Venus in 1960. Sersi, as we know her, Sersi, appeared in Eternals issue number 3, which came out in June of 1976. So she actually was out prior to. She was created. Jack Kirby took a part in creating Sersi as well back then. Jack Kirby goes back a lot. Big up to him, R.I.P. Okay, cousins. Who is she related to? She's related to Sprite, and she's related to Icarus. She's one of the original Eternals. I assume she was there at the beginning when the Celestials created the Eternals. So she's about 1 million years old. Prior to her modern appearances, they tied her in, like I said previously, with Sersi of Legend, the CE Sersi of Legend. So they tied her in. They've done that a lot with the Eternals. Whatever history, legends, mythology that we have, they've tied the Eternals into them. So to make them seem like they've been like riding along with humanity the whole time for the last 1 million years. So prior to her modern appearances, she encountered Odysseus as the Sersi of Legend. She's the one that turned his men into pigs and tried to turn Odysseus into a pig also, but he resisted because he got hooked up by Hermes, the god of speed. she fell in love with him, and she ended up turning his boys back. Other times in history, she encountered Attila the Hun. She exposed Merlin, a copycat version of Merlin during the time of King Arthur. So that gives you an idea of how far back Sersi goes. As far as her modern time comic book appearances, she was set up in New York when she first appeared in issue 3 of the Eternals, and she was a key player in the coming of the Celestials' fourth host. The Celestials, as I stated before, they're basically crazy cosmic beings. I mean, they're to get an idea of how powerful they are, they dwarf Galactus, both in size and in power. So, you know, they're huge celestial beings. They average about 1,000 feet tall. Yeah, and they've also been insinuated in Earth's history since the beginning as well. Other events, key events for Sersi: she joined the Avengers. This was after Gilgamesh, who's also an Avenger. So yeah, you have two Eternals that have been Avengers. You've got Gilgamesh and you've got Sersi. Sersi joined the Avengers after Gilgamesh was injured during an Avengers mission, and couldn't be on the team until he recovered. So Sersi joined the squad. Some of the key events that she was a part of as an Avenger. She and Avengers fought a group called the Brethren, who turned out to be a type of Eternals, different species, but they were also Eternals. And ultimately, it turned out that the Collector was behind the entire event. So the way how it got resolved, Sersi entered a Unimind with the Brethren. They're Eternals, so even though they're from a different race, a different species, they're able to form Uniminds as well. So Sersi entered a Unimind with the Brethren in order to defeat the Collector. And that ended that, but it turned out that Eternals are forbidden to enter Uniminds with other species. And that had lasting consequences, because that led into what is one of my favorite Avenger storylines, the Gatherer Saga. Sersi changed costumes, black and red, pretty decent. I liked her in that costume. It was cool. And she started becoming more aggressive. She actually took out some people. And it was, obviously it was noticed by the Avengers. And it was also noticed by the Eternals. So Icarus and the Eternals came down. They thought that she was suffering from an eternal mental illness called the Mad Weary or Wiry. It's spelled crazy, but that's what it's called, the Mad. I will call it the Mad Wiry. The only way to cure it is to take the afflicted out, which of course Sersi and the Avengers were not cool with. After much deliberation, the Eternals decided to place Sersi in a mind meld called the Gon Josen. And you need to, in order to do that, you need a host, or if you will, to do it with, because what it entailed is you kind of sort of merge minds with the Chosen. And the person that was used for this was Dan Whitman, aka the Black Knight, who was also on the Avengers at that time. The purpose was to keep the afflicted calm, to keep those aggressive tendencies at bay. Sersi was in love with Dane. That's why he was chosen for the job, but he was in love with someone else. That someone else is Crystal from the Inhumans, who was also on the Avengers at that time. So, you know, that made things a little bit complicated, but Whitman agreed to the procedure. What ended up happening, though, the reason Sersi was acting all aggressive and just, I mean, it was like she was going insane. It turned out an alternate version of Dane Whitman had been manipulating Sersi, because he was rejected by the Sersi from his world, right? And he kind of sort of wanted revenge in a sick sort of way on. It didn't matter. It was a Sersi, so he had to get payback some kind of way, I guess. Sersi ended up taking Proctor out with his own ebony blade, but the damage was done. So, to her mind, so she exiled herself, and the Black Knight went with her. They ended up in a place called the Ultraverse, and it was there Sersi became possessed by the Infinity Gems. They're called gems in the 616, stones in the MCU. They eventually made it back to the right timeline, and at that point, she and Dane, they parted ways, and she returned back to the Eternals. They all decided to become more involved in protecting mankind and became like a superhero team of their own. She called herself Mesmer. That didn't really last all that long. There was really nothing kind of sort of heard or seen about them after they came to that decision to become quote unquote superheroes. And the reason being for that is because Sersi was among the Eternals who had her memories erased by Sprite, who also rewrote their histories. There was no record of Sersi ever being in the Avengers. So when the Eternals tried to revive her, Icarus was the first to be revived, regained his memories. He then revived Makkari, and then they went on to revive the rest of the Eternals. When they tried to revive Sersi, she resisted out of fear. She regained her memories, but she still wanted nothing to do with them. So she, went back to living her life, trying to live a normal life. But she eventually returned because she was kicking it with Makkari. She and Makkari had a relationship. In fact, they had one in the past, and they rekindled it. So she eventually returned to the Eternals after getting back with Makkari. This led to the encounter with the Horde and the Dreaming Celestial. It was at this time that Makkari had taken over as liaison to the Celestials from Ajak. Ajak, of course, wasn't happy about that, but that's another story. The Dreaming Celestial told Sersi her job was to protect Makkari, because Makkari's job was to liaise with the Celestials. Sersi failed in doing that. Makkari was killed during that entire event. So in order to try to sort of get a conclusion to that event, Sersi actually transformed herself into Makkari, made herself into a Makkari replica, so to speak, and replaced her consciousness with his, and that led to the Horde's defeat. Sersi was restored. But Eternals, they have a way of always coming back. So Sersi was restored right in time for the arrival of the Dark Celestials. That event led to the Eternals discovering that they were not here to protect humans, as I said previously, but to cultivate them for the Horde, as fodder for the Horde. And as a result, because the Eternals for over a million years, they were under the impression they were here to protect mankind, and they found out that they were here to they were farmers, So as a result, the Eternals, along with Sersi, they started, they went crazy, and they started self-deleting and deleting one another. But like I said, Eternals don't stay gone. Being cosmic beings, they always end up getting resurrected, which happened. They were resurrected, and this led to conflict with Thanos, who was also resurrected. Thanos, if you didn't know, is also an Eternal. He's from Titan. If you're following the MCU, Titan was made out to be like its own planet. Titan in the real universe and in the Marvel Comics universe is a moon. And some Eternals went to that moon, and that's how they ended up there. And that's where Thanos was born. So he's a Titanian Eternal. So he ended up getting resurrected as well, along with all of the Eternals, the Earth Eternals. And he began taking Eternals out. He started with Zurus. Zurus is the king, if you will, leader of the Eternals, and he got taken out by Thanos, as well as some other Eternals started getting taken out. In order for him to be able to get to all of these guys, Thanos was assisted by a traitor in the ranks. So Sersi was key in interrogating suspects, and it was to discover that the traitor turned out to be Phastos, of all people. And he did what he did because he discovered, in order for Eternals to be resurrected, it required human lives and wanted it stopped. You know what I'm saying? So they, they've been through a lot. They were told they were here to protect humans. They find out that they're here to cultivate humans as fodder for the Horde. And then they find out that in order for them to come back to be resurrected, it requires humans to have their lives taken. So, that's a lot. Most recently, the latest thing Sersi has been involved in, she attended the Hellfire Gala that was held by the X-Men during their current storyline, which is, all of the mutants, X-Men, all of the mutants on the planet, if they want to go, they go to the island of Krakoa. Krakoa itself is a mutant island, and the mutants, the X-Men, they've become their own nation. But that's, once again, that's an X-Men story. We're talking about Sersi and the Eternals, and that's about it in terms of trying to get you an idea of where the character behind the character comes from. Let's talk about her power set right now. Because of the cosmic energy that powers them all, the Eternals can basically do the same things. It's just that they just focus on whatever interests them most. All Eternals they're all immortal. They're all basically invulnerable. There are different levels of that. That phrase is relative, invulnerability. They all have the ability to regenerate. Sersi's primary ability is matter transmutation. She can turn anything into anything. I believe in the movie, Sersi can only transmutate inanimate matter, not organic. In other words, can't change humans into pigs like the Sersi of legend did. But the comic book version of Sersi can. She can change organic matter into something else. She's got telepathy, telekinesis, illusion casting, image projection. All Eternals are super strong to varying degrees. Sersi can bench press about 20 tons before using her telekinesis and levitation. She can fly up to about 760 miles per hour. She can shoot concussive blasts from her eyes and her hands, and she can also teleport, but like most Eternals, it isn't pleasant, so she doesn't really like doing that. So that about sums it up on Sersi's abilities, and also a little bit of her history. So once again, I'm not going to go into an in-depth figure review. I'll save that for MCU Collector 24. Once again, the link to the video with Sersi will be in the description below. I will briefly go over some articulation, so let's get her off of the rotating table and do so. Before we go over Sersi's articulation, we will have a look at her the paint apps, her uniform, the costume. All of the Eternals have unique sculpts for the most part, and as you can see, this is the primary reason why, if you haven't heard already, the Eternals don't come with many accessories. They come with a second set of hands. Icarus came with another head sculpt, and that's about it. But we'll see as we go along, as we move along with these overviews. But as you can see, The costume for Sersi is beautiful, very detailed. She's got good paint apps. You can see right there, like with her arms down to her wrist gauntlets. She's got some design, some detail, and some paint going down to her skirt, coming from her backside. Doesn't have much paint on the back, just on the back of the arms. That's about it. That's about it. Her legs, she's got some detail going on right there. She's got line work done down her boots, but they're not painted in. I don't know if they're supposed to be or not. I guess we'll find out in the movie. I suspect they're supposed to be, but it's what we got here. So that's where you got the line work. Her head is on a dumbbell joint, and because of her hair, which looks pretty decent, doesn't have any shading or anything, but it's very nicely done. Because of the hair, she really can't look back any. As far as looking down, she could look down that far, which isn't that much either. She can rotate. The hair does get in the way. Her arms, she could do a 90. She could rotate 360 at the shoulders. She's got single jointed elbow, typical with female figures, and swivel joint at the elbow. Her wrists hinge in and out horizontally, and they swivel. She's got her torso. She can go back that far. She can't really go forward all that much. She can kind of lean to the side a bit, so you can get a little bit of some nice pose in there, and she can rotate, which is cool. There is no, as typical with female figures, no waist rotation. She can do the splits about that wide, probably because of this skirt piece right there impeding. She can lift her legs up, not very far at all, once again, probably because of that skirt piece. That far forward, that far back, double jointed pinless knees, so that also helps too. It makes this this uniform look a lot sleeker with no pins showing, so that's really nice. As far as her feet, she can point her toe that far down, not that far up, and she has ankle pivot and holes on the bottom of her feet. So there you have it. We just took a look into the background of Sersi the Eternal from the 616, the comic book universe, to get a better idea as to where Sersi came from, what she's about, a little bit of her history, and how she's the basis for the character that's going to be portrayed in the upcoming film Eternals by Marvel, and who this action figure is based on. If you want to see a more in-depth review of the figure itself, I turn you to MCU Collector 24. He's got a review up of Sersi as well as all of the Eternals from this wave. He has the entire wave, including the exclusives, that being Thena, Ajak, and Crow. He's got reviews up on all of them. I'll have a link to Sersi's review in the description below, so go see MCU Collector 24. Shout out to him for a more in-depth review of that. As far as here on this channel, thank you guys for rocking with me. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and smash that bell so you can be notified when I upload another video. Until the next time, my peeps, remember, the hunt continues, and I'm out. Peace.